Okay, we'd like to welcome Penny Whitehouse from Mother Nature to our show. How are you doing, Penny?
I'm great. Thank you so much, Nathan and Anita, for inviting me.
Of course.
Yes.
So you are coming to us from Brisbane, Australia, is that right?
I am. It's 7 a.m. here and the birds are chirping and it's beautiful outside.
Right, so you're a day ahead of us.
Yes, I'm in the future.
You come on, you beat me to it.
Oh, you were going to use that line. Sorry.
Yes, of course I was. I think it's the coolest thing that you're literally like you're in the future. It's great. So anyway, since you ruined my joke, you are the creator of Mother Natured, and which is a platform dedicated to connecting kids with nature and creating happier, healthier childhoods. So can you please tell our listeners who you are, your educational background, a little bit about your family, and how you came to create Mother Natured?
Well, my name is Penny Whitehouse, and I've loved nature ever since I was little. I was really connected to wildlife, and so I was really connected to children and wildlife, and so my career kind of went down a into a place where I wanted to be in nature. I wanted to have a career in nature, connecting with wildlife and nature pretty much every single day. So I as a teenager, I jumped into becoming a zookeeper because that was something that I was really passionate about. I wanted to work with animals. And I did a degree, Bachelor of Applied Science in Wildlife Biology, and then later wanted to still connect with kids and decided later on to do a graduate diploma in early years education. And now I have three amazing daughters. And even though I've, done a Bachelor of Applied Science and an education degree, I still feel like becoming a parent was my biggest learning curve. I learned so much becoming a parent, and I'm still learning every day. And they are the ones that really have created that change in me. And I look back on my past and think about the fact that the way I was educated actually hindered me in some ways from connecting with nature and connecting children with nature. And then, so yeah, I kind of spread my journey on Mother Natured, and it started as a wildlife education blog, which was basically about connecting kids with wildlife, but I changed and grew and developed and learnt, and it became more of a holistic connection to nature. So really helping parents to embed nature into their families' rhythms and routines.
I love that. Well, we invited you on because of our love for the outdoors and our belief of the importance in learning and play in nature. And I actually found your website because I was looking for a good nature quote. And your article came up of 50 inspirational quotes about children and nature. And I was like, so I clicked on it. I was like, oh, wow, these are really good quotes. And I was like, well, who is this? Like, who's Mother Nature? And I went down a rabbit hole of like searching your platform. And I was like, this is amazing. We have to get her on. So when I was going through your platform, I saw, like, I read into your bio, and you have quite a bit of interesting employment history. Like you said, this zookeeper, and then a wildlife education officer, and now environmental educator. So can you talk a little bit about those backgrounds and how it's brought you fast forward, I guess, now?
Yeah, and I kind of attribute my journey to nature, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, I feel like sometimes when I tell people I was a zookeeper, it's like saying I still feel like a child.
Yeah.
When you're 10, you're like, I want to be a zookeeper. I actually was a zookeeper.
Awesome. Like, who can say that? Not many.
So yeah, I was a zookeeper for about 5 years. I worked with koalas and all the Australian animals that are cute and cuddly. I was a mammals person, but I also really enjoyed working with snakes and reptiles as well. And I guess I loved zookeeping, but I just didn't feel like it was fulfilling enough, and I wasn't making enough difference. So that's when I did my graduate diploma of education. and I was really lucky to get into a wildlife education position. And it was the best job. I got to educate kids and teach children all about the beautiful wildlife that's in their local areas, and I got to cuddle animals at the same time. I'd come home regularly, and because I'd been holding an echidna on my tummy with my hands, I'd have like little prickles all over my stomach, and I'd come home and show my girls all the prickles on my stomach.
Aww.
So this echidna sitting on my stomach, and so they were beautiful memories, and I loved it. But I guess after a while I struggled because I just didn't feel like there was enough being done for the environment. And I grew as a person and realized that it wasn't just about wildlife, it was about the whole system and the whole rhythm and habitats and plants. And I was so naive. I used to just think about the animals so much rather than the habitat that they need to live in. And these have really changed me. It's changed, and now I'm working as an environmental communications officer, so I actually help spread information about the wildlife and connect people with nature. And of course, Mother Nature is also hopefully creating that change. So throughout my life, I've had a series of career opportunities that have really changed me and helped me grow and become someone who can see the world on a holistic level rather than from just being connected to wildlife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we found that piece of employment really interesting because what most people don't know is I used to be a wildlife officer here in the States.
Oh, did you? And what animals did you work with?
Sorry?
What animals did you work with, Nathan?
Well, we at the time we lived in New Mexico. So I dealt with all sorts of different animals. So elk and antelope and oryx, which is something that's not really native to the United States, but they were brought here, I think, in like the 60s and kind of thrived in the New Mexico desert. We ended up living in the middle of a national forest. And that was I got that job before we got married. And so she came out to New Mexico and met me out there after we got married. And when her and her parents pulled up, this is a true story, I had to do like kind of wildlife mitigation as well, because a lot of farmers are out there. And at the time I had to go and trap a bear and relocate it because it was killing livestock. So when her and her family pulled up to the place that we were going to stay, I had a bear in the driveway. And that was a great first impression of her new home in New Mexico that she's never been to before.
In the middle of nowhere.
Middle of nowhere. I also told her it was the cabin, and it ended up being a single wide trailer from the 1960s because it was the only place you could live out in the national forest. Surprise. Your new home.
Well, anyone that works with wildlife has the best stories.
Right?
Best
Yes.
stories ever. And what a beautiful, introduction to relationships.
Oh yeah, I definitely I just dove right in. There was no like dip your toes in. This was my new life.
Yeah, it was.
Oh yeah, my husband's the same. He was so scared of snakes when I first got to know him. He was so scared of snakes. And now he's like crazy for them. He goes out looking for pythons outside nearly every couple of days. It's just weird.
Well, and that's kind of where our love for a new lifestyle grew, was being submersed in the middle of the national forest over there. It was from then on, we were like, this is the type of life that we yearn for. And I felt like I just never lived anything like that. We were always on the outskirts of the city. So I was surprised I took to it so well and that I loved it. And then from then on out, it's been our mission to have a lifestyle like that.
Yes, I grew up in the outdoor, like loving the outdoors, but we also grew up in a suburban area. And so we went out there. There was nothing else to do. Like the closest gas station was 45 minutes to an hour away.
Mm-hmm.
So on a Friday night, there wasn't weren't going out anywhere. It was we would make espresso and sit out on the back porch and play dominoes and look at the mountain behind the house and listen to the coyotes. On her way home from work, she would come home late because the elk herd would be crossing the road, and it would delay her by like 20 minutes. That's how big the elk herds were there.
Mhm.
So when we left there, we made a promise to each other to keep that lifestyle because we fell in love with nature.
Mhm.
That is so beautiful. And I think I applaud you for seeing that early, because in Australia, the mentality is to, once I retire, that's when we'll see Australia. That's when we'll reconnect and have that slower lifestyle. And not many people get to that until they're retired. And I think if you can try and bring that into your lifestyle earlier, it's going to help you, your mental health, your physical health, and of course that of your children too. So it's so good that you recognized that and made a pact, really,
We did.
to ensure that you, continued it.
So that's our story. Why are the outdoors and nature so important to you? Like, was there something in your life that drew you to it, or something that that you found in nature to help you in life?
Yeah, I guess it's really started when I was little, and I had a struggling childhood. Of my childhood, I struggled. I had my father and my stepfather both had mental illness, and throughout life, I kind of had a bumpy road. I have red hair and freckles, and so I got teased. I was, it was fine during primary school, but high school was really hard. And so I remember a lot of times where I felt big emotions and I was feeling really uncomfortable, or just had heightened stress, or just couldn't feel like myself, that the first place I would run was outside. I would pretty much slam the door, run outside and find a little nook where I could just kind of cower into this greenery, and I would cry. I don't know how many tears fell on the grass or the ground, but whenever I felt uncomfortable, that was the place I ran. And so when children feel those big emotions, sometimes you can't talk to someone because you still feel like you're being judged. And so nature just kind of was that soft place to land. And I think that's the reason I connected so quickly with wildlife, and why it's been kind of was that driving force when I was younger, is because it really helped me to to just feel less stressed, feel more comfortable in myself, and I could just be me. And so I think that's the biggest reason why I became a zookeeper and a wildlife education officer. It was just kind of this transition of nature constantly softening me. And even today, I went for a walk and I've been feeling a little bit just uncomfortable the last couple of days. And I went for a walk this morning, and I usually have my earphones in, and I could just hear nature calling me. And I pulled my earphones out and just put them in my pocket and walked. And it was the most beautiful moment. I could hear there were so many different bird species calling in the morning. I could hear a frog. I could hear the wind going through the trees. And within minutes, I was calm. I was just calm. And so I think nature just is that soothing place to land throughout your whole entire life. And I guess that's what I want to show people, to ensure that they are taking that time for themselves throughout being a child to an adult.
Yeah, I feel like the outdoors has always been our family's remedy to all.
Oh, yeah.
When the kids are restless or they're upset or agitated, whatever it is, all right, everybody out, like we're going, if it's on our property or we're going to a park, but and not just for the kids, but even for us, and I speak for both of us, that there really is something about being in nature that I just feel like clears everything, clears your thoughts, clears those feelings, and it overrides anything like internal. And for us, that's why it's always been so important. And I love that we can do that with the kids. Like, okay, you guys are restless, we're going outside,
Yeah. And even my daughter, she does that now too. She runs when she's upset and she's not ready to talk to anybody. She just needs time. They have their own little places that they go that they run out. run out. And I never chase them. I know that they need that time. They just need that time in nature. And yeah, so I'm so glad that I can give that feeling to my own children.
Yeah, I know for us too, it's kind of our reset button. And if we're in the house too long, you can feel the tension and like the energy just building up like a giant ball. And all I want to do is get out of the house. And that starts from like the story we told, that's what all we would do. And so when I'm in, especially me, when I'm inside too long,
yes,
I get this like internal energy and agitation. And the only thing that I can do to get rid of it is to go outside. And that means typically all of us go, and that's, rain, wind, shine, it doesn't matter. We're going.
Snow now.
Snow now where we're at now is some snow, and we'll still go out. And then every time we do that and come home, everybody feels better.
Oh, I hear you. Yes. I mean, I must admit, like one of my biggest barriers to getting outside is the cold, which is crazy because in Australia we have sun and heat, and I don't even get snow where I am. But I'm a real sook about it. But it's constantly a barrier I push through because it's so important for us to feel those things, and children need to feel those things. That's how they build resilience in their world, is being able to experience the different sensations that they can feel in nature. Everything changes in the snow, everything changes in the rain, everything changes on a windy day, and so they really need to experience all of that because all of it is electric, absolutely electric.
It is. I love that.
Yeah, it's a great description for that. So what would you say your overall philosophy on education is? I know that's a heavy question.
It definitely took me a while to think on this one. I'm so glad you asked it though, because it really was a question that, stumped me. And that's funny considering we're all thinking about education all the time and we're educating ourselves. But I guess for me, education is constantly evolving. So there's not one thing that I could answer that to. It's in terms of educating children, it's respectful parenting and ensuring that anything that I'm doing with my kids is child-led to the best of my ability. It's apologizing when I've said something that wasn't quite right or that might have hurt them. It's taking risks, but not pushing my children to take risks, ensuring that they have the ability to do those things when they're ready. And to be brutally honest, I'm still learning all of that. I grew up with a very different philosophy. And so it's me being constantly conscious of how I'm educating my children, role modeling and being the best person that I can be so that I'm showing those things to them. And I'm still educating myself. So I'm still in the early stages of education. I'm constantly evolving and changing and reflecting on how I'm connecting with my children. And I'm very thankful that I've had an insatiable appetite of education and learning and reflecting, because that's made me consider what I've done in the past that wasn't quite right and trying to make it better and constantly make it better for my children. And I hope that at very least they are seeing that people can change and people can can become who they want to be in a different moment in time. You're never really the same person that you are in the next day. You're always changing. And so education is a fluid thing for me. It's definitely not definitely I can't put a quote or anything on that. It's amazing.
It is. Well, that's that's basically what you said was the philosophy of a lot of homeschoolers. Is that the reason we homeschool is because education is everywhere. Learning is everywhere.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to take place in a classroom. It doesn't have to take place in one spot. It's every day. It's all around you. And for us, and sounds like you as well, and your kids, is that it's happens in nature and outside constantly. Like there's so much to be gained outside in nature, but you know, what you just said is like, for us, it's right on the dot. It's constant. It's all day long. There's some things that we do have to do, you know, specific educational wise. However, after that, just because we're not sitting down with the book doesn't mean that they're not learning.
Exactly. Education is life. It's
Mhm.
it's not designated to one particular time in their day. It's throughout their entire life, from when they're born, you know, continuing, and adults are still learning.
Well, you should be.
Yeah, well, you should be.
Yeah.
There might be a few people that don't, but
There are, I've met them.
Well, before I had even knew what your answer would be to like what your philosophy on education is, just by like looking at your platform and like what I feel that your goal is with your platform on the education aspect is that you're helping make the connection between with nature practical and fun, which I believe is what's most important, because if it's practical, it's actually gonna last in the long run, and it's gonna stick with that family and those kids. And again, like that's what I just felt like I noticed about your platform, that it's very practical. You're trying to help families make that connection with nature.
Thank you. I feel like even on Mother Nature, it's evolved because I was very activity based, and it is the blog is still very activity based, and that's the reason I created the Nature Play Club, actually, because I really felt like I wanted to take parents on a journey to bring their rhythms and routines, bring nature into their rhythms and routines, because sometimes we just look at activities and think that's what we should do with our children, but it's not necessarily the best way to teach connection to nature. And so even though I have all of those things, and there's probably a lot of people out there that just, you know, want to grab something and do it with their children, I want to give them more than that. I really want them to embed nature into their life and, you know, almost take them on a journey of starting from scratch where they might not feel comfortable in nature. I mean, there's plenty of parents that don't feel comfortable in nature. Push through those barriers like screen time and weather, cold weather, and risk, and really push them through to a place where they feel comfortable with those things and can start to really embed nature play into their life and make it easier. Because once you bring nature play and nature into your child's life and you set up some just simple things in your home, the changes are remarkable. And it really doesn't have to be that hard, but it can feel hard for a lot of people.
It can. I had mentioned this in one of our past episodes, but there have been parents on some of the homeschooling social media groups that I'm on that have said, how do you get your kids to play outside? Like my kids go out there for 5 minutes and they say they're bored and turn right back around. And it's really sad because you're right. You just have to, if you can stick with it and push through those barriers, kids will find their place outside, but you have to give it enough time to do so. But you're right. There are parents out there, they just don't know how to approach it. And that's why I think what you're doing is so awesome. And why we wanted you on is because some people need that guidance on how to get there.
Yeah, I must admit, it feels strange to be teaching it because it's so natural for us. And so going through that process and really starting from scratch was really interesting to me. And I feel like I've learned so much more about why people are struggling to get outside, just by asking and listening more, and thinking about what we do that embeds nature play into, you know, our family's philosophy. It's been a real eye-opener.
So was there like a defining moment when you decided that you wanted to create Mother Natured and that you felt like this is something you wanted to do with your talents?
Well, I mean, yeah, nature's been a part of me since I was little and will continue to be a part of me my whole life. But I guess Mother Nature started, as I said, it started with as a wildlife education blog, and then became more holistic as I changed. And I guess the pivotal moment that changed that for me was when I had children, and when I was working in the zoo industry, and I really saw that there was just no action being taken. People would come to the zoo and no one would actually, would connect with the animals, but they wouldn't actually help animals out in the environment. And so I became a little bit more of an environmentalist and wondered how on earth I can get children to connect with nature so that they will want to protect it. And that's kind of where it really changed. It became, okay, I don't want them just to connect with the animal because they don't necessarily know how to protect the whole of nature for that animal. And yeah, so Mother Nature was kind of born from me just sharing the activities I was doing with my children, but then growing and moving on. I actually left the zoo industry, but just because I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't watch what I was watching and not see the action and that should be taking place, where it really was supporting the animals out in the environment. It felt like very much like a Band-Aid situation, where we would have a hospital and the animals would come in and we'd fix the animals and we'd put them back out in the environment. And yeah, but we're not actually saving the environment first. So there was actually parts of me where I realized I was telling people to donate their money to Land for Wildlife rather than actually to the zoo. And I think that was the moment I went, I probably need to move on. And so yeah, I ended up getting a position as a wildlife environmental educator, and that's where I learned about the systems of creeks and waterways, and completely became a geek about native plants and learned a whole different philosophy on connecting with nature for my own benefit as well as my children's. And so yeah, it was really just, I guess, the environmental side of me that changed the direction of Mother Nature. Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit what your website offers and what would be available to families and parents?
Yeah, well, it has a heap of activities. I went a little bit crazy about nature crafts because it's just my thing. I love creativity. So if you go on, you'll see posts and posts and posts of nature crafts.
I did. I'm impressed.
You showed me one yesterday or today. You were sewing a leaf. I was like, wow, she's really good. And I looked at Anita. I was like, why can't you do that?
You did. You said that to me.
Yeah, I believe that nature gave me a very good imagination, and that's the reason I just got into nature crafts. And then I just saw, I'm a very visual person, so I can see all these things and I just want to create them. So yes, there is a lot of nature crafts on my website, and I'm actually changing it slightly to just help create more articles that are going to help parents get their kids outside. But of course, if you want lots of activities that will reconnect your kids with nature, then there's heaps there. But as I said, I've just created a membership called the Nature Play Club, and that's just been a baby that I've been working on for a long time, and I'm so glad it's finally available for parents. But it's a place, I actually asked my community, what would you like? And a lot of them said printables,
Really?
which I didn't mind because I really do like printables. But just makes it easier, you don't have to think, and you can pull it out, and there's a beautiful invitation to play to get your kids, playing with natural materials really easily. Or, encouraging and inciting curiosity and discovery. But they really wanted printables. And then a lot of people were struggling with those barriers that I mentioned, like risk and weather and screen time. And so I guess I created the Nature Play Club to have a really good journey of courses that starts with setting your family's goals and realizing what barriers really you struggle with. And then it moves through those barriers and talks about strategies to push through them. Things like, for weather, it's packing a weather kit, and for risk, we talk about the ways to, center yourself and hold space for that feeling before you yell out, be careful, and all those sorts of things. And then we move on to my favorite part and most exciting part, is setting your backyard up for nature play, so that you can make nature play so easy in whatever space that you have available to your children in the outdoors. And that might just be a veranda, or it might be a bigger area, but you can definitely embed nature play into your life just by setting up a backyard space. And so, yeah, we go through all of those. And then, of course, yes, I have a heap of printables in there too that will help kids connect with nature. But I've kind of locked them down because I really want, until you finish the course, because I really want people to move through and create that lifestyle first before they get, excited about all these printables that they can do with their children. I really want them to see the changes that can be made just by embedding simple things into your life first.
Yeah, I actually love one of your things I saw on your Instagram account where you said that your twin girls, because you have twin girls, wanted to know if they are identical or fraternal, and the little hunt activity you did for them, and it was all placed outdoors and with nature items. I mean, these are the things that I'm like, wow, you really can do anything in nature.
Yeah, that was really random. I didn't know my twin girls were identical, and yeah, it was
until right now.
Really, sorry.
Until right now.
Not well until that moment. Yes, I didn't know. I thought they were fraternal, but they, I always had this inkling that they might be, and I kind of didn't care. I'm one of those twin mums that's like, no, you be who you are. You are who you are, and you don't have to dress the same, and you're an independent person. And yeah, but I hadn't ever really asked them if they wanted to know, which is so crazy. At 8 years old, I said to them, would you like to know? And I had one twin say yes and one twin say no. And I was like, oh God. Okay. And then I found out why she didn't want to know. And it was because she thought she had to have a blood test. Oh. So when I explained no, it was just this simple cheek thing. And she was like, oh, okay. And yeah. And then when I got those results back, I was in shock and decided it had to be just a fun experience, and it had to be outside, and it had to be a scavenger hunt. And so that's, out in the rain, they're running around, getting all these lovely little clues. And at the end, there was 2 little eggs in a basket, and they turn them around and they say identical on the other side. And they were in shock.
That's so neat, though. That's what I love, is how you really are helping give these ideas on how to bring nature into your life. And I mean, we believe in the power of free play, but even like the slightly more structured activities and like the tips that you give and suggest are great tools to help inspire exploration and like spark that curiosity for kids. So I think that's
I wasn't I must admit, like, I have a heap of activities on my website. I don't do all of them with my girls. I just really continuously provide inspiration for people. My kids are definitely free range kids.
I've seen your videos. They are.
Yeah, they don't. I very rarely do structured activities with them these days because they're getting a little bit older and they're just not into it. So now instead I've set up a massive loose parts section in the front yard, and they're out there with saws and hammers and boxes and like all these amazing things. Because it's related to their age group, and I can feel comfortable with some of those tools and those extra risk items because they're older and have the ability to use them. And it's, even though setting up a backyard nature play space is great fun, you still have to tweak it for them and their interests. And yeah, it's an absolute mess. It looks like a junkyard out the front of my house. But I mean, the neighbors' kids are over at our house all the time because it's so fun.
That's the goal for all parents, though, that if you have finally sparked that interest in your child for nature, that you no longer have to implement that, and they can just go out there and be themselves and enjoy it. So that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
I think a big thing for us too is, we've talked about this, is if you instill that in your kids now, one day they're going to teach it to their kids. And that's extremely important, because if it keeps getting passed down from generation to generation, it's something that grows and expands. And hopefully 20 years from now, the entire world isn't sitting on a couch staring at a screen, and there's some, at least some of us have survived and are still going outside to enjoy ourselves.
I feel for you guys. Like we're really lucky in Australia. We haven't had an issue with COVID at all. We're still able to do everything that we want to do. It's just that movies aren't out because no one's making movies.
Oh, I wasn't even referencing COVID. I was referencing people addicted to screens in general.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know. Sometimes I forget that. I forget that people don't have our life.
Yes. Most.
Yeah, and you can see why they can get so addicted to it. I think it's almost feeding. It's feeding. It's their lack of purpose in life that continues to drive them to watch and to consume content. Like one thing I'm really big on with my girls is that I want them to be creators. I want them to create the life that they want. I want them to create, if they want to use social media, just create and share. But yeah, there's a place for consuming, of course, consuming screens, and but there is a time when you need to stop and you need to live you need to live your life, not someone else's life.
Yes.
And so we're constantly having conversations about that because they're a little bit older now. We can have deeper conversations about screen time and how it impacts our lives. And but I do often forget that there's people out there that don't see it, or they are comfortable with that life. And I want to live my life.
Well, on that note, what do you think are the benefits, or that you believe the benefits are in spending time outdoors?
There are so many. I could be here all day, but I really want to bring up three because these three are what has helped me become me from that child who was crying in a tree or tucked into a little bit of greenery. The first one is connection with wildlife. For me, made me feel worthy. So when you feel judged by the people around you, or you're going through something, you can connect with a spider, or connect with a bird, or connect with a lizard, and it's almost connecting you with the entire world so that you know where your place is in it. And then you're able to feel worthwhile because you can care and talk and share things with these creatures, and feel like you have a relationship with them. So if I didn't have friends at school that day, my friends were the animals. And you don't know what your child's going through. You don't always know that the things that are going on in their head or what they're struggling with. And so the fact that a child can go into nature and feel that that's their safe place, then that's going to help them understand their place in the world. And so that's the first one, is it really makes you feel worthy. The second is it reduces stress. Again, all those big emotions, as soon as you go outside, it allows you to kind of wash them all off and reset yourself, as you mentioned, and be calm and think clearly. And so, it's the biggest and best stress relief, and it gives you a sense of peace. And the third, I would definitely say, is visualization or imagination. It gave me an incredible imagination, and my girls have an amazing imagination because of nature. I mean, I used to remember using a whole bunch of different materials and turn them into something else that related to my life, and role play in nature, mud pies and all those sorts of wonderful things. But it gave me because of that amazing imagination, it gave me the power to visualize. And so when I was feeling like I was in a rough time in my life, I could visualize being outside of it. I could visualize not being in that anymore and see the future and see forward. And I think that's the reason why I went, I want to be a zookeeper. I became a zookeeper. I want to be a wildlife education officer. I became a wildlife education officer. I want to work, in communications or environmental ed in a, holistic scale. So I moved towards that. And I believe it's because I could visualize and see myself as those things, and then became them. And nature gave that to me as a child, and still gives that to me today. Even Mother Nature is all because I could see it, and then I created it. And it's all because of that imagination that nature can give you. if you don't have imagination, you can't visualize anything. So those are the 3 points that I really feel have been inspirational to who I am today and to who my children will be.
Yeah, and I like when kids play in nature, there's a lot that goes on that the kids aren't even aware of. And you said it perfectly in one of the quotes I saw, which was, they're not just playing in nature, they are learning, creating, sensing, believing, relaxing, exploring, observing, wandering, connecting, discovering, appreciating, understanding, experimenting. There is just so much that goes on in nature, that there are just so many benefits. And I feel like they're starting to come out with more and more studies that are showing there is a positive relationship between people's emotions and nature, and especially anxiety. We've talked about that in the past, and building, like you said, that resilience. These are all things that if you can just get out in nature, there's a beautiful cure there. And it doesn't have to be medication all the time. There was even a study that I was reading. It was on I'm just going to try to generalize it, but the study was on the participants, how they would recover after a stressful event when they looked at just a painting of nature versus a painting of like some buildings on a street in the city. And they just said they were floored with the results being that just by looking at a painting of nature, they recovered much more quickly from the stressful event. And that's just a painting, you know?
No, I know. And I think it's because we forget that we were once wild. And that was, they spent hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years being connected with the natural world. But for some reason, we now are separating ourselves from that. And it seems so counterintuitive. Like we are part of nature. We are nature. And people that say that we're not animals just drives me insane, because we are connected to every other animal around us. And yeah, the more you spend outside and the more you sit in a quiet spot and watch what's going on around you, the more you realize that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's funny that we have to do studies to determine that nature is extremely important and healthy. If somebody had told people this, I don't know, 50 years ago, they would have said, well, of course it is. But within a short period of time, people have become so urbanized and so used to screens that now we have to do studies to prove that, if you just put that screen, you say you're stressed out and you feel terrible, you don't feel healthy, and you feel like you have, some mental strain. How about you put the screen down? And we're sitting here on a screen, so I understand the importance of computers and technology. I'm not disavowing it, but for a doctor to have to tell somebody that they need to go outside more, and that's we talked about this last time, but they're prescribing that to people. Outdoor time, they're actually prescribing this to people. We've gotten to that point, and it's just kind of sad that we have to prove to people that that's something that they should probably go do, instead of, and I'm not going down this rabbit hole, and there's people who need it, but instead of always prescribing medication, there's other alternatives that might work for some people, and nature's one of them. I believe that.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah, definitely start with nature. If you have any ailments, start with nature. Or, if you have to have medication, but also do it with nature.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's scary. And I guess when I think about that, and I've thought this often to myself, but never really told many people about it, I kind of see us as we've almost domesticated ourselves, like how we've domesticated the cow. We've almost done that to ourselves. We are no longer wild, and we are no longer connected to our environment. And and we're becoming the cow.
That's a great analogy. And I hope I don't butcher this, and I'm gonna go down the rabbit hole here. But I listened to somebody, and he kind of on a podcast, and he kind of was talking about that, how we've become domesticated. But he referenced pigs, and that if you have domesticated pigs, but if pigs and hogs get out into the wild, they physically change when they turn into wild hogs again. They actually physically change. Their bodies change. They'll grow their tusks back. I believe that I think he said their backs will grow like haunches, and it's them going from being domesticated to rewilding and turning into what they were meant to be. And I think partially that is what we're talking about, and we have lost that part of us belongs out in nature, and it's like deep inside us, and some people have lost that.
Yeah, I have to find out more about him from you, because I'd love to learn more about that, because it's often been something that I've been thinking, because as a zookeeper I've seen captive animals, so it's really easy to make that reference between both. And yeah, see us in that way. We're constantly in captivity, and yeah, I want to set kids free. I want to set them back out into the wild.
Well, knowing that the parents are the driving force to making nature time happen, what advice would you give to parents who may not be into the outdoors themselves, but want to get their children involved? And I realize this is like your whole goal, but maybe if you could just like hone in.
Yeah. I can give 3 little points. I guess the first thing is to build nature into routines. So simple things like eating outside more, when you're transitioning from one place to another, make sure that you just take your moment in nature and be aware. Think about when you're going on play dates, go and do them outside, not like at a jungle gym inside, go outside as best as you can. So rhythms and just routines is something that you can really embed nature into quite easily. And it doesn't matter how busy you are, you really can start to do those activities quite simply and easily. The second is definitely set up your backyard play space for nature. And I mean, I have to tell you and I'm pretty certain there's a lot of people that have them now, but mud kitchens are the best.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, they're the best. Ever since my children were little, all the way through to now, they are still having mud bake-offs and playing with mud. And yeah, they really do support play in so many different ways. And so if you don't have a mud kitchen, put one in. And also think about native plants. As I said, I'm a geek about native plants. And they really create the foundation of your nature play space, because they are your loose parts. They help with your mud kitchen. They create the sensory delights that your children can be exposed to in a safe and comfortable way. Because if you're feeling uncomfortable with nature, the best thing to do is to bring plants in that you feel comfortable about. They increase wildlife, so they bring the wildlife in. If you've got more plants, you have more bugs. If you have more bugs, you have more you have more birds. If you have more birds, you have more mammals, and it's never ending, and which creates a whole new layer of stimulation for your children. So many of us, or many people, kind of come into a house and then knock all the trees down and just want this big grassy area, but that's not providing any stimulation for your children. I wouldn't want to go out if it was just grass, but if there's trees, flowering plants and little seed pods and insects and birds and little bits of fruits that I can eat and a garden, I'm going to be out there a lot more. And yeah, just make sure that you're asking your children what they want in their backyard too. Like, it's important for them to have ownership over that space. So definitely bring them into a routine, bring those nature activities that you usually do every day into a routine, and set up your backyard for play space. You don't have to do big extravagant activities like hiking every day or every week, or going to the beach every week to connect with nature. You can start from home where you feel safe and comfortable, And then when you feel a little bit more comfortable, you can start moving out and having bigger adventures, because you want to have big adventures eventually, because it's just, you'll start to connect with nature in a whole different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even Nathan built our kids a mud kitchen. It doesn't even have to be extravagant. It was so simple, right?
I just threw a bunch of old like cups and plates and dishes into like a bin, and we brought it out back. And when we get a lot of rain here in this area of the country, it's like clay, so it gets very muddy. And they just go to town back there, and then we bring them onto the porch and hose them off and throw them in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ours is pretty basic. Christmas is coming up, and so if you have someone in the family that's very handy, this is the perfect time to ask them to build you a mud kitchen. And yeah, ours is pretty simple too. And we got a whole bunch of materials from the dollar store, and also we have, and I'm not sure if you guys have this, but we have a container of dirt and a container of sand. And a lot of people don't add sand to their mud kitchen, but it creates this whole different experimentation opportunity for them to use different substrates, and they love it. And it helps them to mold their cakes a bit better, and they use it to experiment with these two materials to get the consistency just right.
We have not tried sand, so we'll have to try that.
No, we haven't. I just want to pause for a second and make sure everybody realizes how similar we are, the United States and Australia. Number one, apparently redheads have a hard time in the United States and Australia growing up. That's a thing here too. Number two, apparently all the neighborhoods in Australia and the United States cut down all the old growth trees and just like grass for some reason. Yeah. And then they replant baby trees that don't belong there. And then thirdly, you have a dollar store. You guys have dollar store?
Yeah, well, I did say dollar store for your benefit. We call them like thrift shops.
I like that better.
Yeah, we are similar. Thankfully, I like my red hair now. I have no problems with it. I actually love it, and couldn't even imagine being myself without it. But
absolutely.
But yes, I feel sorry more for guys that are redheads. They seem to get it worse in Australia than girls, but I still get it.
And what was the name of your dollar store again?
Well, we call them thrift shops or op shops, so opportunity stores or thrift shops. So you're being thrifty. That's usually what we call out.
I like the op shops.
Different names, but we're so similar. We're just so similar. Yes. Small world.
We probably have a few more venomous snakes than you, though, don't we?
Well, everything in the world that wants to kill you lives in Australia, so you do.
Oh, everyone believes that, but it's so not that bad.
That's just because you're used to it.
Although I was bitten by a koala, and I have a nice scar from that story.
Really? So when we watch them on TV, they look so sweet and nice. They bite?
Well, it was as a zookeeper, but even if you picked up a male or a koala out in the wild, they would probably bite you. They're not aggressive as in they wouldn't run after you, but if you pick them up, they will defend themselves like any other animal that feels vulnerable or uncomfortable. And they do have not sharp teeth, but they have long incisors. So when they bite you, it's pretty deep. Ooh. So yeah, but they're so cute. You have no idea. They're beautiful, and every single one of them is different. And okay, they sound like a weird pig at night, but like howling at night. But I don't know, I love them. They're just, that's a whole nother story in itself.
Our daughter found a show on Netflix, is it? And it's this girl who helps her mom, I think, with the rehabilitation center for koala bears. I had to keep asking Nathan, are those real? Like, are those real? Because they're so cute. Like, I had no idea. I guess I've never seen it in person.
It looks like a stuffed bear.
Yes, like a moving stuffed bear.
They are. And you should see them when they're little, because I was a zookeeper and I got to see the little babies that were born. The babies are just adorable. I had like an addiction to touching their little toes. They have fingerprints like us. Did you know that? They have fingerprints.
Wow.
Like us. Yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty gorgeous. They are. They really are. And every single one of them has a different personality. Yeah, I actually never used to like koalas that much when I was a kid because they were everywhere and everyone talked about them. And I liked the platypus. But yeah, my first role as a zookeeper was working with koalas, and then I fell in love.
I could see how.
This is the best rabbit hole we've ever been down.
Yeah, seriously.
Told you I could rabbit hole.
Koala bears
And platypus.
and platypuses, yes.
We won't go down that one, but those are really cool.
Yeah, that looks like something that shouldn't exist anymore. Like that
You
should
mean
be
like
extinct.
platypus?
Yes, they just so odd looking. It looks like something that like would be extinct.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, I could. Yeah, they are a really interesting combination of an animal.
They are. It's so odd.
But
Yeah.
they're also beautiful. The way they move, and they were, yeah, one of my favorite animals when I was little was a platypus, and seeing one out in the wild was probably one of my biggest highlights. It came really close to me and just sat up on a rock and then just dived back into the water. But they're a really interesting animal. I don't know how well they're doing. They're not doing so well in Australia because they live in creeks, and creeks can get polluted very easily if people aren't taking care of the environment around them. And so, yeah, I just took it from a really funny place to a dark place, but hopefully we can save them.
Absolutely.
Well, with your platform, you're going to be raising some wonderful nature and wildlife lovers. So we're thankful for that.
Where were we?
Well, before we wrap it up, we're going to ask, what is your favorite quote involving nature and what does it mean to you?
This is, yeah, I've seen a lot of quotes and I can't choose one, but I have a little mantra that sits in my head that works for me personally. And I say it for my children, and I'm sure everyone's heard it. But to me, it's like a pocketbook. It's a pocketbook quote, which means that you will remember it. And it can be something that you say to yourself regularly, but it really is just be the change you want to see in the world by Gandhi. Or Gandhi? Gandhi. And I think in terms of nature, it's always just being more sustainable, being out in nature, be the change that you want to see in the world. And if I say that to myself in many different facets of my life, I will again visualize it and hopefully create that for myself. So every morning I go out and walk, and about 6 kilometers, I'm not sure how far that is for you, but and I pick up rubbish now. And I do that because of that mantra in my head, to be the change I want to see in the world. I don't want rubbish on the ground. I want to pick it up. And sustainability, being more conscious about the things that we're using in our environment and giving back to nature when you can. So planting more trees and supporting the environment. For me, that's what it comes down to. So even though I want my children to grow up with a connection to nature and receive all the gifts that nature provides for them, there is definitely an underlying thought process of continuing to give back to nature, and always being conscious of what you're doing to impact the earth. And so I guess that's, for me, my little pocketbook. It's not my favorite because I have so many, and as I said, I can't choose one, but that is the one that I kind of tend to try and roll around in my head as often as I can.
That's great. Well, where can our listeners find you?
Well, they can find me on mothernatured.com and on all social media as under Mother Natured. I'm on Instagram and YouTube and also Facebook. And yeah, and there's the Nature Play Club you can find from Mother Natured as well. So that's we'll tell you all about what's inside there and help you to immerse nature play into your routine. But yeah, I'm everywhere.
And Pinterest. I don't think you mentioned Pinterest.
Oh yeah, and Pinterest. But I'm on social media as much as I have to be. I try really hard. If you go on Instagram, I don't post a lot of stories because I really don't want to impact my children and their play too much. So I'm on there as much as I can be, but it's really important for me to practice what I preach and have time away. So yeah, you can get me anywhere, and email is probably the easiest if you ever want to contact me. But I'm very conscious of the amount of time I spend on social media, and I definitely don't let it control me.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Penny. It was great talking to you. We really enjoyed it, and we will be putting all your links and stuff into the show notes so people can find you as well. But you
Thank
have
you so much. Oh, sorry.
no, it's okay. No, go for it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this chat. It's been really nice to, I mean, gosh, we've jumped to lots of different things, haven't we?
We have. We love
But
it.
it's been really lovely to speak with you both, and thank you so much for doing the same thing in encouraging families to connect with nature, because it's and your family for connecting with nature. It's something that's so I think imperative to our life right now, and especially at the moment, because I do worry that everyone's inside more and forgetting that there's a whole world outside to explore.
Well, great. You have a great rest of your day, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.